Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, everybody. We're gonna get started. If you're getting a drink, that's okay. We're gonna do intro remarks for a little bit. We've got about 10 minutes of that. So, this is the third Deem and MCA Symposium. Welcome. Thank you, thank you. If you don't know me, my name is Daniel Atkinson. I'm the manager of public programs over at the MCA Chicago. I want to welcome you to tonight's event, Multisensory Placemaking, a Social Practice Experience. We like long titles here between Deem and MCA. Before we begin, if you could please take out your cell phone and make sure that it's on silent. And I ask this every time and not everyone does it, and then I was in a performance at 2 o'clock and someone's phone went off. So please, please, please. Thank you all for coming, and thank you also to our generous funders. Thank you to the MCA staff who set up all of this ambiance here. Thank you to the Deem staff who support this in so many different ways. The Chicago Architecture Biennial who co-hosted the welcome pre-party with Rebuild at the Stony Island Arts Bank, and of course Rebuild themselves, and the Land School who have opened up their space and care to us in this third iteration of the partnership between MCA and Deem. And look at this space, it's so beautiful, it's an amazing space. I will have more words to say tomorrow about the context of this gathering and this particular moment in time. But for now, I just want to be grateful that we get to spend this time together, that we get to party together later. This evening, we have New Gote and Theaster Gates in conversation, followed by a sound experience with the legendary Dwayne Powell. To introduce the folks appearing tonight, I want to welcome Liliana Moore from Land School, who has been a consistent guiding light throughout this event. Please join me in welcoming them to the stage.
Hello, everyone. My name is Liliana Moore, and I am the Programs and Hospitality Fellow here at Rebuild. I'm so pleased to welcome all of you here today as we celebrate nearly 20 years of Theaster Gates land art practice in Grand Crossing, beginning with the transformation of Listening House on Dorchester in 2006, and now arriving here at the Land School after a decade-long reconstruction project of St. Laurence Elementary School, the site of Theaster's Deem Issue 4 cover. The Land School deepens our mission of reconstituting underused and undercared for spaces on the South Side, transfiguring histories of land dispossession through artist-led spatial and archival projects. Rooted in craft excellence, alternative archival stewardship, and radical approaches to land management and urban planning, the Land School is a site of creative, pedagogical, and process-driven experimentation. Later tonight, we will get to spend some time with a beloved force in the global house and soul music scene, DJ and cultural guardian, Dwayne Powell, as he presents a special sonic experience. But right now, I'd like to introduce the artists we have in conversation today. New Gote is a designer, strategist, and educator dancing between design, culture, pedagogy, and socially engaged art. He is the co-founder of the strategy and design studio Room for Magic and co-founder and creative director of Deem Journal. Theaster Gates is a contemporary artist, radical archivist, and is the founder and executive director of Rebuild. Without further ado, I would like to pass the mic to them. We'll welcome them to this.
Hello, hello, hello. Hey, brother. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out.
So, as we were back there hearing the amazing intro, one thing that I think we both paused on was a number, 20 years. And 20 years of a practice that catalyzes, mobilizes, metabolizes spaces, turning space into place. I had the fortune of interviewing you along with Alice, and one of the key things that we got from our conversation was a framework of placemaking, in which architects will come in and be like, we're going to make place and we're going to put a yoga studio there, Whole Foods over there. And when we approached the conversation with you, I remember we sat with the questions and we sterilized the questions because we were like, okay, we're going to be talking to Theaster about placemaking. Let's ask him about this formal practice of placemaking. And what was interesting was in the conversation, when we asked you in a very professional way to the highest astute, you said, nah. That's not what this conversation is about. Your reply was equating placemaking to a much more guttural, instinctual practice, one that includes the marking of space, drawing a perimeter in that space, cleaning the space, and then ceremonies of music, libation, and dance until the gods show up. And so in that, what we were trying to do was unpack your process and the practice of it. And if anyone has ever seen the cover of Deem with Theaster standing right here, this backdrop of the land school wasn't the same. Yeah. Where were you, that was 2 years ago, where were you in your practice of demarcating, cleaning, and waiting for the gods to come?
Yeah, thanks, Nu. So I want to first acknowledge everybody in here and say that, you know, wherever this conversation goes, I feel strengthened tonight to have everybody's presence here, because it kind of completes a set of ideas, ambitions. And so I thought, you know, before we get to the physical building, I just want to kind of offer to us as a group of artists and designers and believers in the places where we live and people who work hard for others and teach, that I think I was really just trying to demonstrate psychically to myself that I had the capacity to change in some small measure the conditions around me. And that if I could psychically change, if I could say I'm not in a bad place that's getting worse. I'm not in a violent place. My neighbors are not violent. My neighbors are loving. And I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving. And that felt like psychic work first to myself. And that if I could convince myself that there was a reason to stay and a set of purposes that made sense, then I might be willing to then invest in my belief. And that the investment I'm talking about initially isn't financial investment, because I didn't have no cash when I started this thing. Mm-hmm. That the investment initially was convincing others to come have dinner on the block, convincing my homies to move on the block with me, asking my homies if they might want to buy on the block in 2006. Talking about the block from 2006 to 2012, talking about the block in its future glory, not in its current stigmatized condition. That my block is great, even if it's on its way to being great. So the idea felt much more like, if there was anything radical, it's that I don't have to be afraid of black people. I don't have to be afraid to walk down the street and to ask my brother if his daughter, who's 3, wants some free arts programming on the block. Or, hey, we got these kids from Harvard this summer. Y'all walk them to school. You know, and that our devices wouldn't stop themselves at drawing and manifesting wayfinding or some shit. Mm-hmm. That it would also include the daily morsels necessary to live. And then those early investments then gave me confidence. And I think once I had, which is kind of faith, like it was like, I'm gonna keep working on this until something happens, until God shows up. And I think that then money started to show up. And like people around me were like, I don't really know what this is, but it seems like you're pretty committed to it, you know? And then I would have conversations with myself, y'all, like, do I buy the condo on the Gold Coast? Do I buy the house in the Hamptons? House in the Hamptons is $8 million. What if I took that belief in the Hamptons and kept that belief mechanism on the block? Then what could the outcomes of the block, how could the conditions change on the if I believed in the block at $8 million? And what I found was that the block could change radically if we chose not to buy the house in the Hamptons. Ain't nothing wrong with the house in the Hamptons. No. But I wouldn't be there enough because I got to go to work. So I could go visit my friends in the Hamptons and I could put the $8 million on the block. And so then something started to really open up that felt like that it was then bigger than my belief that the schools should remain open, or bigger than my belief that the bank was important. It became bigger than, it's now, I don't even know what's happening now. Mm. And then I was thinking, like, you know, I was looking at your questions and I was thinking, yeah, we're not open every day. We're not, you know, we don't have security guards, can't afford them. We don't have, and then I was thinking, well, if this was my house in the Hamptons, I wouldn't be open every day. And I wouldn't have security guards. And don't nobody invite me to their house every day. And I think about the block as an extension. This is everything I got. And so I think about this work as a work that will exist even greater after my death. Mm. That today they announced that Rauschenberg is going to sell Captiva. That this brother worked 40 years assembling these buildings on this island, protecting it from this encroaching large development, and protecting a mangrove in a forest. They're going to sell it. I was just thinking, fuck. Rauschenberg was one of the cats I looked at. When I went to Captiva, I got to use his paper. I got to use his vellum. I got to use his cutting boards and his screen printing equipment. Rauschenberg's. I got to soak in his tub and play in the jacuzzi and stuff. It's great. And I want people to be like that. Anyway, we'll get to it.
Well, what that makes me start to think about, 20 years, 40 years, in Black permanence. And what does, thank you very much. I feel like your practice is one of conjuring, of calling in, of prototyping, creating beacons that other people can pick up on. And one thing that you just said right now is thinking beyond yourself. In your practice, what are some of the mechanisms that you're currently sitting with to think about how this expands beyond you, the person, so that the burden only isn't on you.
Yeah. One part of this, you know how like right now I feel like if we're in the age of Aquarius, we're also in the age of the pop-up. And it feels like so many critical responses are like, what can we do immediately and fast? And we get in and out and we do what we need to do. And we just use their stuff as long as we can. And then we do our thing and we can iterate and iterate and iterate. And I think that's important. That's an important work, and it is one kind of work. But I feel like I'm actually involved in a project that's going to take 75 years. And that I am actively trying to protect land and create pop-ups while I'm trying. Like, my principal thing is to protect our land. Gangster style. And the gangster in it has to do with every land use tool I learned in school. Land use tools where people say that they're protecting a watershed for ducks and mosquitoes. They not making no watershed. They're not protecting no watershed for ducks and mosquitoes. But nobody will say what they're really doing. They'll say, we're protecting the ducks. But in protecting the ducks, it means that there's 2,000 acres that people will never build on except the people that are already, the 5 houses that are already there. And then they can create a nature conservancy to protect the mosquitoes and the ducks. And they can never pay taxes on 2,000 acres. If we don't know that tool, we need to learn that tool. So is it possible that I could create Kenwood Gardens and we could do yoga there and we could house it up there? But it also means that ain't nobody buying that land to build something 20 years from now when they could have, And so I'm protecting something that maybe we don't even believe is sacred today, but then once they take it, we always saying, how the fuck did they take it? And I don't want to be on that side of the conversation 20 years from now. And so it may be that if all you know is pop-ups, when you see slow game, it don't look familiar to you. So it's like, well, why he ain't open? Because being open ain't what this is about. This is about your grandkids having the right to live on 69th and Dorchester 40 years from now. That's exciting to me. So that when I think about place, I feel like any good programming we do is sidebar to a much more radical project. Protecting ducks and mosquitoes. And that's all we need to say. This is about yoga and house music. And that's all I'm saying. Y'all know what I'm saying?
So it's one thing you called out was people may not always be aware of the long game and seeing the long game. The long game is hard. It's iterative. You're building on wins and losses. And one thing I've been sitting with in my practice is not necessarily looking at things as good or bad, win or lose, but what does this situation offer me? What does it have to offer? And for you, what are some of the moments that may not be celebrated, that may not go towards your intentions, but that have offered you a deep lesson that has gotten you to where you're at now?
There's so many, man. The transition from the bank to the school has been a complicated thing because the bank is beloved. Closing Currency Exchange Cafe in one iteration or the other, and some people really liking the third iteration, others liking the fifth, others liking the seventh. Like, damn, I really miss when Peaches was there. Damn, I really miss when y'all had them fire martinis. Damn, I really miss being able to just work on my PhD. That's 3 different phases of the same space over 9 years. And each time there were costs and lessons learned, and in some cases friendships lost, because people would sometimes come to the project expecting it to do something miraculous, and if it didn't do that, there was a lot of disappointment. So I feel like the thing that grieves me the most is the relational toll, and not just the toll of managing people, but the toll of losing friends or being misunderstood, or the project really being a kind of a stopgap for other people's imaginations and their dreams and their intentions, and really wanting to see that manifested. So I think one of the things I've learned a lot is, like, I feel like I have more grace today, even though I'm tougher today. I don't smile as much. I'm funny, but I don't smile as much. But I feel like I've grown in grace, and I feel like I have a lot of apology in me about whether or not things worked for other people. I think about that kind of stuff. These last 20 years, in relationships to buildings that we've finished, to contractors that we've known, to floors that we've recycled, to friendships, I could tell you who touched 6918. There was a period when we had when Charlie Vins and Mijay Gula were working with me, and Tad and John Preuss and Norman. It was like, before we went to Documenta, we were on the block and we were scrappy, but we put these young brothers and sisters to work. We were milling any wood we could get. We were just milling, and it was just beautiful to not know what the end game was. There was no end game. We were just kind of in it, And so I feel like I had to kind of develop a philosophy around that, in part to protect my psyche. Like, is it like this iterative work that I'm doing, is it okay that it's iterative and it doesn't have outcomes that are like a tenant? Like, is tenancy, is the idea of someone renting the apartment that I just rented, is that the only outcome of black space in a 6 flat? Is the only outcome of a 3-bedroom apartment that I could get Section 8? Is that the highest achievement that I could freaking imagine? Is that I could get Section 8? That I would expect the government to subsidize my belief in a black family with 3 bedrooms? And then what happens if Section 8 goes away? Then are we still left with the deep belief that people should have affordable housing if the subsidy goes away? And so I think that I've been just kind of grappling with, I'm an artist. I don't have any major claims, but there are moments when I feel like the thing that is clear to me is that ain't nobody gonna do it for us. And so the thing that comes out of me is like, ain't nobody gonna do this for us, and it's a kind of anxiety of autonomy and self-reliance. It's an anxiety, and it's an anxiety that I try to put in my team. Like, ain't nobody gonna do it for you. We gotta be ready to anything. And it may mean then that the hours of the cafe are infrequent, or that we have to shutter and then open again. But the bank, we own the bank. And that 50 years from now, when it's endowed, it might have more standard hours. And that will be okay too, and that will be an iteration. But I'm proud of the fact that we're sitting here. I'm proud of the fact that we're sitting here tonight.
Yeah. So in part of our interview with you, like I'm doing now, I went off script. So I sent questions, and the last couple of questions I asked aren't in the questions. But I remember I asked you a question, and it was because, have y'all seen the Theaster Gates episode on Apple TV, Homes? Has anybody seen that? If you haven't, you should go check it out on Apple TV, second episode, Homes. There's a moment where you're sitting in the archive house, and you have on a blue pea coat and I think some salmon pants. But you have no shoes on. But you have no shoes on. And it struck me that I'm like, how you got a jacket on, but you got no shoes on? So then my sister Alice isn't here, but she's very good at being like, "No, don't go off script and start asking these random things." I was like, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do, Alice. So you just gotta relax. So I asked you, I said, "Hey man, it's my first time meeting." I was like, "Hey, so you're on a documentary, there's people around you, and you got no shoes on. What's up with that?" And your response was, "Because I'm country as fuck." That was what you said, right? Then in that, the following day we had the interview, and I brought up the question again, right? And what your response was that there is a practice in being grounded, and you wanted to feel the actual earth underneath your feet. And bringing that up again, one of the things that I'm always interested in are what are the rituals and the practices that you use in order to keep you grounded, in order to feel the earth under your feet as you're going through these spaces that you're transforming.
Okay. So when I was 12, I was old enough to go to Mississippi by myself on Greyhound. And my mom would, we'd have to wear a thing, a little lanyard, and then I would be assigned to the bus driver. We'd have a big stop in Memphis, but we'd stop in Kankakee, then you stop in Memphis, and then from Memphis, somebody could pick me up in Yazoo City or Belzoni. And I was too young to be very useful in Humphreys County, but my uncle would take me with him as he would look at the fields. We own land, my family farms, and my uncle in the very early morning, he would go and check on the soybean and look at the crop and see, if it rained, if the rain was useful, if it flooded, the state of things. Then he would check on the cows. And then, a cow needs to be delivered. And then it's like, check on the pigs. And one of the pigs, we had to cut off the testes of the pig because it had, maggots were growing, And it was like, but my uncle was moving around, and then he would go check on the barn. And if my cousins were working on the barn, they'd restore the barn. And then that shed was for one of the tractors. It was the new tractor. It couldn't get wet, and the rainy season was coming, so and so. And we had like between 800 and 1,000 acres. And for him to get around the land would take an hour. And he would just kind of stop because we had a lot of land. And some land had to rest a season, and then we would turn that land and then plant something simple, that was nutrient generating. But I didn't understand crop rotation. I was young. But what I loved was being in the pickup truck with my uncle and bumping around to these different buildings and it taking an hour to get around his land. And so when I think about Dorchester and the bank and South Chicago and the school, every morning I get in my truck and I check on all the buildings. And I get up at 5:30 or 6, the way my uncle did and the way my dad did, and I check on the buildings because I have to kind of make assignments to the staff, to the team. And that ritual of kind of being reminded of Mississippi, and it's like, oh, if you put all the buildings together, I only got 1.5 acres. My family got 1,000 acres. But when we think about land in urban space, we think, we should have a house and a yard. But I'm from land. We from, and my, and I've been talking about my dad a lot because I miss him so much. But my dad is always like, if there's land, you should be growing stuff on that land. You know what I mean? Because their relationship to land is so specific. So I think one of the rituals I have is bumping around and being reminded that we have a building that we call the monastery. It's right next to Kenwood Gardens, and it's an old ComEd utility building. And I didn't know how to get the building. I didn't know how to get the building. I knew it was vacant, but I didn't know how to get it from ComEd. I didn't know how to get it from the city. And I was living at 6918. My house was right in front of that building. So in the morning, a couple times a week, I would go and I would run around the building. And I would, like the children of Jericho or something, I never really had to say it out loud to myself, but I would go to Kenwood. I didn't own any of the land or any of that. I would just go to that block and I would just run it up and down, and then I would run around this building.
Physically jog?
Yeah, I would jog around the building.
Okay.
In the morning.
And nobody said, hey, is Theaster good? Did y'all see him this morning?
I was the least of people's interest.
Okay.
2012 is
Fair.
20. And so I would, and then some things happened where, we opened Dorchester Art and Housing. I met Rahm Emanuel. He was our mayor at the time. He said, is there anything I can do to help you since you took this photo with me of this project that you had just done? I said, can you help me get this building? At the same time, I had met the gentleman, the former Mayor Daley, through his daughter, Nora. And I was an emerging artist, and I had met these two politicians, one in office, one formerly in office, and they both that day, whatever this day was, they both called a person at ComEd. And I got a call back from the senior vice president of community relations at ComEd. And they said, we'll do all of the remediation, and you'll own the building in 3 months or something like this. And so, when I think about rituals, I think about we have the word imagination, but I don't know if what I have is an imagination exactly. I think I have a portal kind of, I'm interested in futuring. And when I'm not a jogger, I don't want to jog around I definitely don't want to jog today. I was lighter and even less interested in jogging then. I was like, I don't need to jog. I'm good. But something told me to jog around this building, and I followed that. And I feel like the rituals are temporal. They're things that I do now. I've set up sound systems in damn near every room of every building in my life. I got a turntable and some good speakers and some kind of sound thing or some kind of instrument almost in every room, as if it's a kind of weapon against bad things. And I'm doing that not as strategy, but as a kind of intuitive. It's like, oh yeah, you should definitely have a piano in this room. You should definitely have those clip speakers should definitely be in that room over there. And it's like, you know.
So I made this reference earlier today that I'm going to bring back up again. Have you been to Bergheim? Are you familiar with Bergheim? So for those who don't know, Bergheim is a club in Berlin that has a very strict door policy. And the way how the door policy is set up is that this club was made as a gay fetish club back in the day that then has become this beacon, a pilgrimage for techno music. And what's very interesting is that the club is presented as a very exclusive space. You stand in line for 3 hours and then you don't get in. I did not get in. Can you imagine? You do not want me in your club. But what was interesting, though, that I learned recently is that their approach to the door is very binary. This club is a sacred space that was created for a community that did not have space. And you're either one or the other. You're either there to participate or you're there to spectate. And you being a spectator means danger. And so in that, they created a policy that is meant to keep the space as sacred as possible. So as somebody who's constantly opening up your home, opening up spaces to people, what are some of the mechanisms that you try to create that is meant to ward off or meant to protect and meant to incubate the safety that you want to incubate?
Sheesh. Sabina, you guys turn around and look at Sabina. Sabina, raise your hand. Sabina's I have Sabina. But I think that one of the challenges that one of the critiques of Rebuild is that same thing, that there's a kind of private intention or a critique of the, like, what kind of insider do you need to be in order to come to a dinner, or why is bar exclusive? And it's like, it's not exclusive, we got 120 chickens. We past 120 chickens, I can't feed you, you know. And so I think that you know, we look bigger than we are, but we're actually like a house. You know, we're 10, 11 people running 30 buildings. And it means that we have to trust the partners who have delivered over and over again. We trust the friends of friends. We initiate new trust with the team that we have. So Lily got friends, and Jamila got friends, and Elizabeth had friends, and they're like, we trust our friends. And so then I have to trust my team to trust the people they believe in. And it's slowly kind of less and less about me filtering or me. And it's like, trying to create a culture where everybody believes enough in the thing that we're all believing in each other together, you know? And then it may mean sometimes that, like, if a person ain't never been to the bank or to Kenwood Gardens and they see 400 free people, there have been moments where people didn't know what to do. A person hasn't known what to do with somebody else's freedom, and they felt they could invade their freedom. And so the community of house heads had to be like, no, homie, you know, and it's because there was like a body of love and a body of mutual respect, and then everybody could see the crazy cat. Everybody could see the crazy cat. And then there were people in the culture who could handle the crazy cat, because we got to go and check what's in the coolers, and we over at the gate, but the community itself is doing that thing. And I'm really proud of that we haven't had any burglaries or vagrancies. I ain't got no real stories like that. Do bad things happen around? For sure. But man, we've been so blessed. And there are moments when I'm like, there's probably too many people up in this garden. And then, the cat's out. It's 500 people in the garden. It's 30 people outside. And they're like, do you know who I am? And I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, Sabina's like, I'm drinking a Capri Sun. I'm having my best life. And Sabina and Lily over there having to handle the cat. It was like, I am Frankie incarnate, And it's like, look, we're trying to protect everybody, and people don't want to hear that when they're trying to jack. When they want to jack, when people want to jack, they don't want to hear no, you can't come in. So I think that we're always trying to balance the anxiety of what could be taken with the joy of giving.
So we told the team, so we'll probably have like one more question, maybe.
This is so hard. My little brain hurts. I had to think this hard, y'all, all day.
There's these questions, and we've gone off script, right?
I talk about love and attention as central to my placemaking. Attention is itself a multisensory act.
But I feel like this conversation does offer a bit more than us going down the route of only talking about the Black spaces that we uplift, because there is, and I heard you say this before, thinking about an art practice, right? And social practice as an art practice, one that is participatory, one that doesn't just look at the output, but looks at what the output starts to create, but also takes up a burden. An art practice that intentionally moves towards the burden and taking up the burden. And so I think in this conversation, what is really illuminating me is even to be able to uncover some of that not every single thing you see when you're at the garden, like if you don't have a Sabina, but that not all these spaces, everything is running smoothly, but to be able to celebrate what has been created, what has been uplifted, and what will continue to be perpetuated. And so I think in that, and even in this dialogue, what I'm truly inspired by is, well, I'll put it this way. I have an executive coach, and I'll be like, Mary, so then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. And she goes, no, and look at all you've been able to do despite that. And I'll say, cast a check, Mary. Cast that check. Come on, Mary. Cast a check.
That's beautiful. I mean, I think you're right. There are two things that I want to respond to, that I'd like to offer then in closing. The first is maybe why I feel like there's such an ardent appeal to this group. Right? I feel like for the last 12 years, my artistic practice really was happening kind of outside of Chicago, and I would not separate. I don't imagine myself as like a part-time social practitioner and a or a part-time visual artist, and that I don't imagine them as hats anymore. It's like, I'm an artist, and part of what I've been trying to do is give form to my calling, and to give voice, give form to the voice I know I have. And some of that form has manifested itself in the creation of spaces, and then some of that form has manifested through the creation of performances and acts of creativity and sometimes objects. And that feels like a whole life and a spectrum of one healthy artistic life, right? But I feel like tonight I'm letting my community know, our community know, that all of our varying practices matter, and that there is no hierarchy of practice when you're committed to building the nation, and that the world has a way of creating hierarchy, and then we sometimes believe that that hierarchy is real and right. And as a result, the thing that ruins us is that we imagine ourselves no longer connected to each other. So I feel like I'm trying to make an emotional appeal that I am no higher in a hierarchy, and that all of our places in this world of nation building, all of our places is important, and that we need each other more than ever. So I feel especially raw this evening, because I feel I'm projecting kindred because I felt so much distance from the art and design community in Chicago, if I can share my heart. And that in some ways, if there was ever the moment, and this is where I might have to give Mary's number, that I've tried to keep my head up and do the work despite the chatter. But my hope is that the Land School would not resonate as a Theaster project, but as the demonstration of a collective belief that those unheard voices in Black and brown communities, that those voices have a right to be. And that for those of us who declare ourselves creative, experimental, non-genre, non-gendered, non-believing believers, that there would be a home for you somewhere in this thing I'm doing. And I hope that y'all would invite me over for a biscuit or an egg. I eat pork, that might change. I'm open, but that we would, that the work ultimately that your symposium could offer is a bridge back to each other. And that my hope in making the space available tonight to you, to the MCA, to to Dwayne, my staff being here, it's an investment. It's a love investment in the truth of my belief in us.
I got one more question, y'all. Stop. Hold on. This is one more question. What's the Land School saying?
We need places where things might happen. We got a space where this could happen. And if I had overdetermined what this space was on this night, this couldn't happen. We got an open space where things can happen. And the things that I'm privileging are things that need a stage, that want an open space. Music things will happen here. Experimental dance could happen here. Health and wellness things could happen here. But it's a place where the potency of the space is bigger than the programmatic mission that I could offer you. Here, we have space where people could be up in this mug and do things. And that's about all the mission we need. And any more precise mission, we writing that shit for other people. What happens is that people come to me and they say, I need a place to screen my film. And I say, oh, you can screen your film here. And then somebody says, I need a place where I want to do a book launch. It's like, oh, you can do your book launch here. It's like, oh, I need a place where we can do yoga. You can do yoga here, right? But it's like, and I could turn that into a mission. But I need us to be able to separate the organizational apparatus part from the values proposal. You know, what does it mean psychically that we didn't have to do this at Patio Tools? And then we didn't have to go to the fucking 9th floor of the Logan Center. We didn't have to do that. And that we could hold each other, knowing that lots of people contributed to our presence here. I could make all the shout outs to all my people. My Terra people are up in here, my Ford people in here, my Mellon people in here, my Kresge's and the Wallace people and all the Joyces and all the people. And my money up in here, our sweat is up in here, and people are like, oh, it's not open yet? Bro, you're going to do that. I need that. So I feel like this is a space that Rebuild owns. That's important to say, that it's not owned by me, it's owned by Rebuild. That's important for a lot of like IRS, 501c3. Thank you, you guys. We're a 501c3 public charity, and working to ensure that community feels heard and seen, and that this is a safe place for culture. And we have music classes and dance classes, master classes, residencies. We have our archive programming on the 3rd floor. And really our mission is to imagine that abandoned spaces like this no longer have to be abandoned. And with your support, be gangster about it, y'all. We should be gangster about it because we're benefiting from gangsters. We benefiting from this is all gangster money. This all ain't no clean hands up in this piece. And so it's really about what are you going to do what are you going to do? How's it going to get from your heart to your action? What are you going to do? And that's the question I fall asleep asking myself. What am I going to do? And this is just what I could pull off. Mm-hmm. I hope y'all have a good time tonight. Yeah. We're going to have a good time with Dwayne Powell, and I ain't got nothing else to say.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Hold on, I got to give some shout outs. So there was a good closing question. What are y'all going to do? when you go to sleep at night, what's the question that's going to keep you up? And how do you start to participate in moving towards your desired future?
Yeah.
So let's give a couple of quick shout outs. Couple shout outs to our partners. So we want to give a shout out to the MCA,
The Richard H. Driehaus Foundation,
the Graham Foundation.
the Chicago Architecture Biennial.
We want to give a shout out to Norman Teague Studio.
Thank you, Norman Teague Studios.
Yes, sir. To Sabina Rebuild Foundation. Who else? Brownsville Winery, Eric.
Thank you, Bronzeville.
Yes, sir. Ruby Fine Hibiscus over there in the corner. Definitely check them out. Grab a drink.
Thank y'all.
And then I'm going to ask you a favor. So we are about to clear the space, and we are about to celebrate until God comes in.
No doubt.
And so there will be, this is participatory. We're going to stand up, and we're going to start moving chairs. And we're going to usher in Dwayne Powell. Dwayne, who's been a resident for the Rebuild Foundation for many of years, for a long time. And he is going to usher us through the rest of the evening in
Give
celebration.
it up for Dwayne Powell.
Give it up.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And then we'll see y'all tomorrow at the MCA.
Thanks, everyone.